Welcome to another episode of The Inquisitive Analyst. I'm your host, Marcus Udikang. It's the show where we chat about business analysis and project management and the challenges and triumphs within those fields. It's inspiring, informative, and very much inquisitive. I also like to include items on the periphery of those subjects, and that's the type of guest that I have today. So my guest today is a career coach, speaker, and facilitator. He's also involved with community-based training program development and developing employability skills. And he is involved with public speaking training and coaching. He's also a TEDx speaking coach. So please help me welcome to today's show, joining us from Hamilton, Canada, Emanuel DaCosta. Welcome, Emanuel.
Thank you, my brother. I am well. Thank you for having me. This is quite the honor. I'm very proud of you, sir.
Well, it's very much an honor to have you on the show, too. So the feeling is mutual.
Indeed.
I thought I'd probe your mind for a few questions about career coaching and skills development. So let's start out by saying asking, how did you get started as a career coach?
To be honest with you, this, like so many other parts of my journey, has been accidental. I just right place, right time. So as you know, because we went to school at a certain period of time, I started off doing public speaking and debating as a hobby, which transitioned into public and speaking and debating coaching. So I coached my university's debating team. While doing that, I was in the process of doing a job search. And so I joined an organization. And while in the class, they recruited me to work for them. Mm-hmm. So, and the reason they recruited me to work for them was because of my public speaking background. I was comfortable in front of an audience. I was comfortable conveying information, which is one of the good things that comes along if you have a solid public speaking background. Being able to sell an idea as well as a product or a service is a skill that is important to develop. So having that skill, I had a chance to join an organization called the Job Finding Club. And our focus was, as you said in your introduction, a community-based type training. So our focus was on more mature workers and helping those individuals to develop the marketing skills that they need to present themselves effectively in the marketplace. So how to write a resume, a cover letter, interview effectively, sell yourself effectively. From there, it just sort of snowballed because individuals who came through the program, especially those who were at sort of the executive level, wanted to have sort of that one-on-one experience where they didn't want to sort of single themselves out in a classroom because their challenges were unique. While other people were saying, well, gee, yeah, I would love to get a job paying $20 an hour. These guys were saying, if you're paying me under 100,000, I'm not interested. So how do they have that conversation with a prospective employer and not bring that subject matter up in a classroom of people who are middle class at best? So that started sort of a sideline thing that happened. And from there, it just sort of snowballed where I got a reputation of being fairly good at what I do. And people would reach out to me to help them either plan their careers or prepare for that next either big promotion interview or that next job interview. And it pretty much started like that, all very organic.
Yeah.
I wish I could say it was my plan and I had a spreadsheet laid out. And no, it was all very organic and pretty much all very accidental.
There's a book by John Steinbeck that says the best plans of mice and men often go astray.
Exactly.
So, plan or not, it sometimes goes off the path.
Yes. Because my plan, well, like any competitive debater, my plan was to go to law school. That was the idea. I was going to go to law school and become a lawyer, like every other debater I did.
You would have been a fine lawyer.
Man, I'm not sure about that because so one of the good things that happened to me was one of the bad things that happened to me at the same time. I wrote the LSAT. After writing the LSAT, I got a job in a law office for a summer, which is the dream of every aspiring lawyer. And it was during that particular tenure that I realized how earth-shatteringly boring for me law would be, right? No. It wasn't Perry Mason. It wasn't LA Law. It was nothing like right? You know, so recognizing that, okay, this is probably not going to be my path. I remember phoning my mother up crying because from high school, my goal was to become a lawyer.
Wow.
And the wise woman that she is, she says, you know what? Get a job, find your path, you'll figure it out. You're a bright kid.
Yeah.
And fortunately, I got a job that had a 5-week training program. And I kept thinking, no, I can do that better. This is interesting, but this can be better. Right. And that's pretty much how I got into the actual training and development field, because, I saw what was possible. And sometimes that's all that, an ambitious person needs. You just need to get a sense of possibilities and then explore them. And I was lucky in that respect.
Like Dylan Thomas, you took the road not taken.
Indeed. Yeah. Very much so. Very much so. And I'm glad that I did.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, because I've been doing this now for decades and I love every moment of it still.
But I think you're very good at it too. Actually,
thank you.
Like you did mention, we didn't work together, but we were in debating together. So
correct.
You were kind of a coach of mine way back when, and I still see you as that good type of coach person. So
thank you.
When I first met you, I thought this is something he should go into, and lo and behold, you did go into it.
Yes.
Now you worked for a Center for Skills Development and Training in Hamilton. So maybe you can take us through a bit of the work that they do.
Yeah, the Center for Skills and my relationship with them is an interesting one. My relation with the Center for Skills goes back to 2002. And I was brought on board because when they started up, they were the adult education branch of the Halton Board of Education, right? Eventually it spun off and became a quasi-autonomous organization, and now they're a fully autonomous organization. And so when I started with them, I started doing software training, which is interesting because some of your younger audience members may not know this, but you actually had to pay to learn how to use Microsoft Word, Microsoft Office, Excel, Access, PowerPoint. And I did those trainings, right? And it was when I was doing those trainings, I was doing a piece on pivot tables in Excel, not exactly riveting, exciting material at best. But my class and we were having fun because I tried to make my training sessions as interactive and as enjoyable as possible, especially when the subject matter is dull. So somebody walked by my class, I heard a bunch of noise and hooting and hollering and so on, and knocked on the door and said, "What are you guys doing?" I said, "Oh, we are having a ball with pivot tables." And Nancy, the lady who came by, she's like, that's pivot tables. I said, "Yes." So she goes, "Okay, well, have fun." And she left. And then she started to leave. And then before she closed the door, she said, "Do me a favor, swing by my office before you leave the center." I said, "Okay, no problem." So I went by the office and she told me about this program that they've got. She goes, "We need somebody who's energetic, who's fun, who's enthusiastic, who will get along well with youth." And I was, "Why are you talking to me? I'm a software trainer." And she goes, "And I think you'd be perfect for the role." So they gave me the curriculum. I looked it over. It was boring. And it was. And I reworked it to make it more user-friendly for the audience. And that's pretty much where it started. So I worked in a program called Getting Gear. Well, to be fair, the full name of the program was Getting Gear with Skills Trade. And the idea was to introduce young people to the trades. And to that end, they went and they learned construction, they learned machining, they learned electrical. And in the early stages, they'll throw in different pieces like welding and auto shop and so on. The core program is now focused on those three major trades. And my piece was this employability piece. So I taught them the employability skills. I taught them the soft skills that they needed. Things like conflict resolution, things like time management, things like resource management, budgeting, financial literacy. Those are the components that I did for them. And again, from 2002 until about 3 weeks ago, that was one of my principal clients and one of my principal gigs, right? Nice. I still do other pieces with other organizations, but that was sort of the core of what I did. And
Nice.
it was, honestly, it was a lot of fun. But after nearly 20 some odd years, after nearly 20 years, you want to try something different.
Yeah, no doubt. No
So
doubt.
the
I don't
opportunity
blame
that
you.
is helped me do something different. And that's where I'm going now.
Nice. So say someone's looking for training in business analysis and project manager, right? How would, say, a business like the Center for Skills and Development, how would they be able to assist these types of people?
Here's what, and again, it depends on the facilitator, it depends on the counselor. Being able to do a thorough search on not just the requirements of the job, but the organizations that are most likely to hire within that framework is important. So you, for example, might be looking for a job as a project manager. What I would do is I would walk them through something called the NOC, which is the National Occupation Classification System. So in Canada, one reason I love this country, every single job, no matter what, so long as it's legal, has a registered job description with the federal government. And that job description outlines not just what the job entails, it also outlines the requirements for getting into that job. What that also does is it outlines all the different terms that are used for that job, right? So you may think I may have graduated from a project management certification course, when in fact, somebody else may call it organizational ninja. Well, that term organizational ninja will also be registered on the NOC. So when I go in and I look at project management, I will see all the different job titles that are listed under project management. And I can, when I do a search for a job, I can look at all those different job titles. And those are also keywords that I might be able to put in my LinkedIn profile, so that when someone is doing a search for anything of that nature, my profile will likely pop up because I've got all the keywords and all the key terms that are listed. So it's about sort of giving an individual a sense of what resources they need. Okay. Most school-based programs simply don't have the time to go into that kind of detail. And it's understandable. You're focused on the content that relates directly to the job itself, right? So someone would do that. They would also, depending on your status, whether you have a disability, whether you're Canadian, etc., they may also be able to offer some financial incentive to an organization to bring you on board. The center has a number of programs related to either the federal government or the provincial government to help you out. The same is the case, by the way, for anyone who's listening, with an organization like, say, the YMCA, or the place that I'm going now called Path Employment. Many of those organizations, if you see the Employment Ontario tag on your window or the Service Canada tag on their window, they may also have access to financial resources that they can give to an employer to hire you. In other words, they can pay someone to hire you, which is not a bad thing.
No, that's actually a pretty good thing, even if you're an organizational ninja.
Even if you're an organizational ninja. Correct. Correct.
So what are some ways to help individuals define and meet their career goals? And how do you know how to offer them the right tools and resources?
Okay, so there's generally a couple of starting points. Very often what happens is one would get into an area of work because they've heard that is challenging, or they've heard that is interested, or they've heard that it pays really, really well. And it may not necessarily be the best fit for them. So there are a number of tools that one can use. For example, Myers-Briggs is one tool that you can use. Personality Dimensions is another tool that one can use. So any of those evaluation type tools to give a sense of where your interest is at least directed. It doesn't mean that it's going to say, be a doctor, be a dentist, be an astrophysicist. Not necessarily, but at least it will tell you, so these are the areas where your interest seems to lie. Then you look at, I would then go to the NOC and say, okay, so here are all the different job titles that relates to what you want to do, and here are the requirements, and here's what a typical day on the job looks like. Which ones grab your interest? And they'll say, great. And then I ask them what I call my Uncle Elmo question. And here's the Uncle Elmo question.
Uncle Elmo.
You get up tomorrow morning and you hear some bad news. Apparently your Uncle Elmo has just died. And you're like, what's it? And he left you $26 million. So Elmo's now your favorite person on the planet. There is, however, one caveat. Uncle Elmo has a visceral distaste for idleness. So in order for you to see a penny of this $26 million, you have to have a full-time 9 to 5, 8 to 4, 7 to 3, whatever job. So if money was not the issue, if it wasn't about, I'm going to do this job because it makes me money, if status was not the issue because I want to look good and, meet the girl or man of my dreams, what would you be doing? That's when you really get a sense of where people's passions lie, because they will say, oh, I got it. I would be doing this. I'll be doing that. I'll be working in art. I'll be working in music. I'll be working in sports. I'll be working in broadcasting. I'll be working in theater, whatever. So then you start looking at their skill set and say, okay, how is this skill set transferable to the areas where you would really like to end up working? Right? So in my case, it was, I would get a job where I'm public speaking. Well, what are the jobs that allow you to stand in front of an audience and speak? Teachers, professors, facilitators, workshop facilitators, trainers, and there's a whole list of other functions that allow you to do that, right? So if you're studying project management, but you'd rather be public speaking, then maybe what you should be considering is teaching a project management course. So you both get to utilize the skills that you've acquired, and you get to do them in a passionate, in a passionate, creative way, because this is now not just your bread and butter, but your pride and joy.
Nice.
Right? So for me, when I work with individuals, my tagline, for example, is my goal is to get you from good to great. You can't get to greatness if you're doing something that you think sucks.
Yeah.
You can't get to greatness if you hate what you do, right? There are no great people out there who lack passion, right? So it's about marrying your skill set and your passion in such a way that you can express yourself in the workplace by doing work that you're good at and that you love to do, right? And, it's a simplified discussion I just had, but that is in a nutshell, sort of kind of process that I'll take my clients through.
Nice. So as you've mentioned, you have that background in public speaking, like myself. So if what are the type of skills that we can learn from public speaking that can help us grow in the workforce, do you think?
One, listening, both physical, intellectual listening. And by intellectual listening, I mean thinking about your audience and feeling what your audience is presenting. One has to be empathetic to be a good public speaker. And by that, I mean, if you crack a joke and it falls flat, don't crack another joke like that. Being able to project one's voice and modulate and control the emotion in one's voice is an important part of any sales process. And as a public speaker, as a politician, as a lawyer, as a coach, as a teacher, as a salesperson, being able to sort of ensure that your audience, whoever you're speaking to or in front of, is able to be receptive to what you are saying, that's an important skill. Okay, so I think those are skills that you'll have to develop. You'll have to have good listening skills. You'll have to have good voice modulation, good pacing, understand the importance of cadence, understand the importance of breathing, which is, I'm always surprised at how many people actually run out of oxygen when they're anxious or excited, and they're trying to say something that they're really excited about. Because when you lose that, when you lose your ability to breathe effectively and in a controlled fashion, invariably your voice qualities on all levels will suffer, right? If you have a voice like yours and mine that tends to hang out in the lower registry, when you stop breathing, what's going to happen?
Nice.
When you stop breathing, you're going to end up going higher and higher and higher.
Yeah.
And you're going to sound shrill, and you're going to sound nervous, and you're going to sound out of control.
Mhm.
Right? And for anybody who is either in a leadership role or wants to move into a leadership role, I think it's important that one has the ability to at least project a sense of control.
Yeah, you need that command within your language. Any good facilitation techniques that you can recommend to our listeners? You're pretty good at facilitation. You've got a long history of doing it. Any facilitation techniques that you can recommend to our listeners?
Yeah, it's the same. Okay, so I consider a speech or a workshop in the same vein as you would consider an essay, right? If you've written essays in school, you remember this maxim: say what you're going to say it, say what you said, right? So your introduction needs to be a preamble to what's going to come. What comes is going to be a reflection of what you had just introduced. And at the end of the conversation, your summary is a reflection of your presentation and ties directly back to what you promised. Because what will happen is an audience will lose you if you say, we're going to talk about pens today. And then all of a sudden, you're going on about measuring tapes, which has nothing to do with pens. So unless you transition from pens to measuring tapes, you're going to lose your audience. You can only make that transition if you say, we're going to talk about pens, and we're going to talk about pens as not just a tool, but as a way of measuring, what you are doing in terms of when you write. You need to write in a measured fashion. And in order to write in a measured fashion, you must have a sense of what length, depth, or breadth you're going to in your presentation. So for example, if you use a measuring tape for that, you say, I need this to be 1 foot long, 1 foot high, etc. Now you've got context. Now you've given context. So you want your presentations to have that kind of structure when you're facilitating. Because it's bad enough that the people who are sitting in front of you often are there because they have to be there. Don't make it torturous for them as well. Make it interesting, make it fun, right? The other thing is this. For a 3-hour presentation, for example, as a general rule, I would write about 90 to 100 minutes worth of content. The rest of it is left for questions, discussions, challenges, etc. Because when the audience gets a chance to be involved in the conversation, they are going to become more invested in the learning process, right? And if you do that, and going back to what I said earlier, and you listen carefully to their emotions and their words, you are less likely to harp on stuff that they already know. Right. So if they go, yeah, we know this stuff, you ask a question. If the question generates an expert response, there's no point in hammering the thing home anymore because they got it. Then you can move on to something more interesting.
Nice.
Right? It's a relationship, my brother. It's a relationship.
I like that. Fantastic. Any recommendations on steps to take to build strong public speaking skills?
Yeah. I would say the very first step that you need to do is find something to model, right? So when I was younger, I was very much a fan of John F. Kennedy, and I would listen to his cadence and the way he spoke. And later on, I became a very big fan of Malcolm X and the way that he presented, right? And Martin Luther King and the way that he presented. And so those styles already work and they exist, So if you listen to a Barack Obama, for example, you will hear Malcolm X's cadence. You will hear the presentation style of an Abraham Lincoln, right? Read a Gettysburg Address with Obama's voice in your head, and you can see where the influence comes from. Right? So find that one style that works for you and start to emulate it. Eventually your own voice will come through because you can only be fake for so long.
Yeah.
And when your voice starts to come through, embrace it, recognize that this is your voice, and then do what you need to do to make it better, right? Also, accept the fact that you will never, ever, ever give a perfect speech.
Hmm.
Ever.
Are you sure?
You will. If you do, if you give a speech that is perfect, your career is done. Because then you have no more room to grow. You have no more room to improve, right? Here, I am terrified, to be honest with you, at the concept of ever being perfect at anything. Because for me, I think of perfection in the state of nature. Think about a mountain stream. The mountain stream comes cascading down and it lands on this lake. There's a moment there where that lake is perfect. It is pristine, it is glistening, it is perfect. A millisecond after that moment of perfection, it starts to degrade. It starts to stagnate, right? Perfection is the first stage to stagnation. Stagnation is the first step to death. I don't want to be perfect, right? I think it was Lieberman who said, nature does not demand that we be perfect, only that we grow. So as a presenter, as a coach, as a teacher, as a facilitator, your goal is to be constantly growing and constantly working, because that's what's going to keep you passionate. That's what's going to keep you excited. And that's also what's going to keep your audiences engaged and interested, right? So if you do a piece that is not perfect and you're thinking, oh my God, it's not perfect, I can't do it. No, do it. Because what you're going to find is that the areas of what you perceive as imperfection may be, in fact, that area of vulnerability that gets your audience to open up to you and listen to you and respond to you, right? So don't be afraid of the imperfection. See it for what it is. They're lessons to learn them, embrace them, and you'll be fine.
Nice. I like that. Well said. With good accent and good discretion, as Oscar Wilde once said.
Indubitably.
Indubitably, no doubt. A gentleman and a scholar.
He was actually, yeah.
He was. Indeed, he was. If anyone from the audience wants to get in touch with you, how can they do so?
The easiest way to get in touch with me is through LinkedIn. Actually, even easier than that, if you Google my name, Emanuel DaCosta, Emanuel DaCosta, I will likely show up in the first 5 hits, right? Nice. I'm not sure why, but for some reason, my name shows up quickly. But you can look me up on LinkedIn. And if you reach out to me on LinkedIn, I have a really annoying habit of engaging with people who engage me. So if you reach out to me, I will be delighted to talk to you.
Fantastic. Well, it's been a delight to listen to what you've had to say today, Emmanuel. I think we're going to glean a lot. The audience will glean a lot from it too. And there are a lot of business analysts and project managers out there who are into the public speaking, and some of them who want to get into public speaking. So I think your words come at a good point in time.
Absolutely. And I mean, again, if it really doesn't matter where on the planet you are now, but if you need some coaching, if you have a speech that you're having a difficult time writing or developing, it would be an absolute pleasure to help you.
Fantastic.
You know, it's one of those things that I'm good at because I've been doing this since I was 3 years old. My very first public speech was as a 3-year-old.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
That's where it starts. You know, the earlier that you get into this,
Yes.
I think the easier it comes over time. And I was away from this for a long time, and getting back into it, you know, you have to. There's a lot of practice that's involved, but I think if you've been keeping it up for that as long as you have, then you know, there's it just comes naturally. It's amazing.
It does, thank goodness.
Fantastic. Well, thanks, Emmanuel. It's been a pleasure.
Man, the pleasure was absolutely mine. It's been an honor talking to you, and it's good to see the kind of progress that you've made in both your life and your career. I'm very proud of you, young man.
Oh, thanks, Emmanuel. That's an honor coming from you.
Thank you.
All right, great. Well, have yourself a wonderful day.
I will. It started off on a fantastic note, and it's only going to go uphill from here.
It can only get better.
Indeed.
Okay. All right. Great. Take care. Bye.
Take care, my friend.
And now a word from our sponsors. The Lewis Institute provides an enterprise project management program that does more than just train PMs. It helps support them from the CEO level on down. These courses help certify project leaders and prepare them to pass the PMP exam. The Business Agility Institute provides Emergence, the Journal of Business Agility. This quarterly publication brings you inspiring stories from the most innovative companies. Use the promo code ANALYST to get a 10% discount on your annual subscription.